Hey everyone, welcome to Can't Afford to Record, the YouTube channel where we figure out the art of audio production together. And today on the podcast we have Marc Danzeisen. He's played drums, delivered harmonies and backing vocals for Gilby Clarke, Riverdogs, and even contributed to a Def Leppard song, as well as his own releases where he basically wears all the hats and plays all the instruments and does everything. Man, this is probably the longest podcast I've done on Can't Afford to Record, but really all for good reasons, because Marc shares some really amazing stories, and to be honest, we couldn't leave anything out, so we didn't. Now, don't forget, if the Zoom quality isn't your thing, that's okay. You can go and check out the more lush audio version over at Spotify or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. Big thank you to Marc for being on Can't Afford to Record. I can't wait for you guys to hear this conversation and this episode. Enjoy.
Robby's show. It's a Robby's show. How do you record this crap?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Well, I hope we can figure it out this week. This hour, I mean. We are here with Marc Danzeisen right now on Can't Afford to Record. Thanks so much for being here, Marc. How you
Cheers,
doing?
thank you. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, I think we all are. You're in LA?
Mm-hmm. Burbank, which is probably
Burbank.
a great place in LA because it's not LA. It's like any town, USA kind of town. So I like it here.
Okay. I just feel so jealous about my backdrop now. I wish I could have what you have. I've got like a skateboard,
right?
and that's it.
There's a skateboard somewhere in that pile of crap back here, but if you could see, half of this is furniture because my daughter had to come home from university.
Of course.
So
yeah,
we have two sheds that are full of drums and crap and amps and cases, and I couldn't fit it there. And this is half of what's left because she sold her sofa and her love seat and a big chair. So I still cannot, as of now, unless I squeeze in and set up a small drum kit.
Yeah.
But it's a storage / tracking room now, so we'll just keep it like that.
Okay. Yeah,
so don't be jealous because it's a rat fest.
Okay. Well, look, it's great to have you here. We're always sort of shooting back and forth and talking about music and talking about audio and all that kind of stuff. And I really can't wait to get into it and sort of, dig into your brain a little bit more, learn a little bit.
Good luck with that.
Learn a bit from you. Have people that are listening to this podcast or watching right now learn from you. But I always start off each podcast with the same sort of question. And that is, do you remember a time you couldn't afford to record?
When I probably came to LA.
Okay.
That was probably the time, because prior to that, growing up, I had a dad who was also a composer, arranger, musician, who was also a gearhead. So we always had reel-to-reel recorders, 2-track stereo recorders. And he even, because he always was recording woodwinds and quintet stuff and in the living room, because we had an old house. It was great for acoustics, hardwood floors, plaster walls, kind of an old 1923 Craftsman house. He actually built his own 4-track, had a friend of his work on the heads for it. I mean, before the years of Tascam or anything else. And there was one European company, I can't remember the name right now, that made a 4-track recorder in the 60s.
Is it Fostex?
Not Fostex. Different. Oh my God, it's killing me that I can't remember the name.
Yeah, it's killing me too now as well.
It's like, I don't know, like a name like, sounds like a diarrhea medication, like Dualax or something.
Yeah, I know. I do
Dualax. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
It's something like a Dualax, Laxaquick. I don't know.
But
anyway, it was oh God, I can't believe I can't remember it. So anyway, he built this 4-track recorder. So when I was a kid and I had my drums in the living room, when they weren't around, we would do stuff. My sister would play guitar. So I was always around stuff to record if I had an idea, but I was too shy to sing my ideas or do anything. So I just kind of took it for granted that it was there. You recorded drums, maybe, my sister was playing guitar and singing and me playing drums with it or trying to sing with her. We didn't get along, but that's a whole other story. So when I moved, that was late 60s, 70s. I was just a kid. I mean, I'm 60 now. So that was, late 60s, early 70s. Then I started getting more into, wanting the career choice of I really want to tour as a drummer. I want to get the hell out of this small town that I was living in and go out on the road. And we were only 60 miles, 60, 70 miles from Riverside, from LA, which was the town Riverside I lived in. Um, so when I finally got out and started playing with a couple different bands that I was in, 80 through 82, 83, I had all these ideas and I would grab a guitar whenever possible because I kind of started playing guitar around the same time. Drums are like if I had an order of the pecking order of what I think I'm good at to what I'm average at, it would be drums would be the number one because that was always the bread and butter. Then it would be probably bass, vocals, guitar, somewhere around there, trickling into, everything else, keyboards, play by ear, whatever. Always been an ear player, properly trained, but early properly trained, but you forget about all that theory crap later on. You just kind of do what your soul tells you. So I had no recording anything until I got a cassette Tascam 4-track, the Porta Studio. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. But by the time you bounced all these tracks, it was like, that was basically, you had to live with that hissing from bouncing so many times on that stupid cassette tape. So I just really couldn't because I was just living check to check, doing session work, having a day gig as a craftsman or whatever, building things, playing at night. The guys I was playing with usually didn't have anything to record on because back in those days, whether it was the 80s or whatever, there was recording studios everywhere, and whether it was just a post-production house or your friend had a studio, or mostly they would have you in, whether it was a 16-track, 8-track, 4-track, lucky to find a 24-track. You could always go someplace. So nobody really, the home recording thing wasn't even heard of.
No.
And half the time everything was on spec anyway. Hey bro, man, can you give me like a week of recording and I'll pay you if we get a deal? Which is such the biggest bullshit statement ever. It's like checks in the mail. It's the same statement.
Yeah.
So it's never going to go. I don't know anybody that's ever worked on spec and never got paid. So that was the times probably all through the 80s, just drumming so much that you kind of forget, you have all these songs in your head. You really can't get them down unless you're lucky enough to have a friend that has a studio, or you have a little Tascam recorder or something like that. But it was frustrating. For me, it was frustrating because there was more to me than just being the whipping boy drummer, and I would co-write with some of the bands that I was in, but it wasn't the same as like you are, where you could sit there in your home or your studio at home and create on your own without any outside influences, just pure, this is what I love to do and I want to record it. And when you don't have that, I mean, when I first got married, 89, I had kind of a writing production deal with Taboo CBS, which is their R&B label. And they had Alexander O'Neill, Sherelle, and a few other R&B artists. It was basically their black label. And I was lucky to be on it as a white guy because I was, we got along great. I've always been a huge R&B and soul and funk guy. Love that. I just love it. Mm-hmm. And they gave me like $5,000 to get a keyboard, a little drum machine, just a little writing thing set up and a little rack to put it all on and a couple little monitors and power amp or whatever. No, I didn't have a power amp. I had an old Marantz record player receiver.
Yes.
And I'd use that for my outputs.
Wow.
With house speakers. So that was in our apartment when I first got married, but I didn't get to use it much because 89, 90, that's about the Riverdogs time when I started with that band. So I was busy drumming again for the next year. So yeah, it's so frustrating, especially for writers, if you don't have your tools. It's like being a poet and not having pencil and paper, it's just frustrating as hell. So yeah, for me, oh man, I remember that time and I'm so grateful now that things have worked out, and I'm still married and my wife's not frustrated with me being locked in hibernation mode in my studio. And that, kids come along, families come along, jobs come along, and then things change and then opportunities come and go. So very fortunate now that I have all I can need, all I need right now. Can you always not have enough gear? Sure. because we're gear whores and that's what we love to do. It's like, hey, I have a great mic, but oh wow, they came out with a better version. I need that one
I
now.
need that one now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh wait, they have a new Les Paul. That's, oh my God. Yeah. You're always looking for the better thing, but I know I'm taking a long way around to answer your question, but there's so many little variables that come involved with that. And, with what I have, I've always been a champion of like, you know what, if you have something that's just adequate and you can make it sound good, then you are a hell of a lot better than you really think you are, because it's all about tweaking and it's all about getting the natural sounds. And I have so many guys that I'm not friends with anymore who are just total like engineer nerds that, well, you have to do this and you have to do that and you must have this for your studio. And I argue with them and I was like, well, call me the indie guy who's out in the field, but you know what? I don't think what I do sounds bad. And what you do sounds maybe too polished and you're thinking way too much about what you do instead of having it have a signature. Because you remember when we were kids, when we would listen to stuff, it all sounded different, whether it was new wave or metal, whatever the hell it was, or punk. All the productions were totally different, but they all sounded good because number one, there was good songs. Number two, you identified with the production of each of those artists. Van Halen records early on sounded like Van Halen, and no one sounded that way. Zeppelin was the same way. Anybody, the old classic rock, but even now, where you listen to Muse sounds like Muse. Posies sound like the Posies. I mean, it's just they all have an identifiable sound as well as songs, but the sound is so important, and it could be shit, but could you and I look at it and go, man, those drums sound weak, I could bump those up? No, it works for what it is.
Yeah.
Just let it alone. It's already out and published, so let it go. So all right, that's my long way around. Sorry.
Well, you've amazingly and very elegantly managed to. So many segues and transitions I wanted to jump in there, but
Did I
really
hit on like all your bullet points in like one sentence?
I think we've actually done it. So
all right, I'll see you later.
Yeah, good one. No, this is great because we've got loads to come back and circle around to. And I'm going to try and remember because you hit on some amazing points there. It was great listening to that explanation. The first one is, why is it that drummers tend to just be so wonderful at, taking their hands to other instruments, and guitarists, we tend to like get very precious about our guitars? Like,
yeah,
sure, I can keep a drum beat, or I can play a bass part, but ultimately, I'm a guitarist, and I'm super proud, and I have a lot of pride being a guitarist. But drummers, one of my best friends, Matt, who I write a lot of songs with, he's an incredible drummer, but he also spent so much time learning piano and guitar, and he's like buying a vibraphone right now, and he's just one of these guys that can just jump to anything. And now he doesn't need to really outsource other musicians so much, because when he's recording, he just does all the parts.
Unlike him, I like to use other people because collaboration, like you and I touched on this through emails, collaboration is really important. And I'm not selfish. I mean, I can be super selfish. If somebody says, like, if I'm my music supervisor, when I do TV and film stuff, he used to call me a lot. They don't do this too much anymore, but he would come, he'd send me an email. This show needs, a song, but they don't want to pay $100,000 for the licensing right of this Cheap Trick song. Can you do something that's Cheap Trickish?
A little bit, yeah, right.
It's a sound-alike thing, right? And I'm like, well, without getting copyright lawsuit bullshit, sure, I guess I could do that. So, but I love that challenge, and a lot of times I will sit down and throw up the click, and then all of a sudden I'll do a scratch guitar, then a bass, and this and that, because usually you only need a minute to give them, a couple minutes at the most. Rarely they'll say, can you do a full song? Give us stems and we'll just piece it apart. So I don't know. I had a father who would not let me just play the drums. So I'm one of those guys that he wasn't Hitler about it. He was the most mellow, soft-spoken man, and I miss him a lot. My dad was like my hugest idol, and I could never be him. I could never be the guy that could sit there and write an 80-piece orchestra score off of my head, barely going to the piano and hearing everything and having perfect pitch and doing it. It just amazes me, and I'm so jealous of that, and I would love that. I can write a little bit, but he was like, I want you to understand theory and melody and not just banging on the drums because you're a hyperactive kid on Ritalin. You know, I really want you to understand what music is about. And I said, well, I do. It's in my head. You don't have to tell me that. Blah, blah, blah. I was a punk. I was a little brat. And like I said before, if you met my sister, you know why I was a brat. Fighting back every inch of my way, you know. But anyway, yeah, I know a few drummers. Eric Scotus, one of my oldest friends. Eric Scotus is one of those guys who's pretty well-rounded, good singer, good drummer. He did the Imperial Drag thing after Jellyfish split up.
Yeah,
so
I love that album.
So Eric, he was kind of he was pissed on a little bit in that band because it was basically Roger Manning's band and it was Eric's band, and they were the main writers and they wanted no interference from anyone else. You shut up, you play the drums. Bass player Joe, you play the bass. Joe's and Fits in the Tantrums now, which is a huge band. Eric has been in a few other bands since then, but he's one of those guys who is very, I think insecurity has a lot to do with it. Although I think some drummers won't admit that because they have the cliche stereotypical drummer thing of, he's a bully. He loves to fight. He's Keith Moon. You know, he's crazy. He's not going to take any advice from anybody, which a lot of drummers are like. They're all just bashers. They're not musicians. They're drummers. And I would hear that. I'd get so pissed off because I'm not of that ilk. And Eric isn't like that. Brian Tichy is another drummer who's mainly a rock and metal drummer. And he's a showman. But Brian is also a Berkeley guy who plays guitar like Eddie Van Halen. I mean, he's one of those guys. And, but he doesn't pursue it really. He just, you know, I'll play with, if you got enough money, I'll play with you. If you need a drummer, I'll play with you. He's a drummer's drummer, just like Matt Sorum is a drummer's drummer. They don't ask questions. They like to play. I, on the other hand, will fight tooth and nail to do whatever I want. And I think any musician out there, if you're capable of doing more than one thing, you need to do that. You don't need to sit back and take bullshit and have people tell you you're just a drummer, shut up. You know, right. I've quit a lot of bands where guys have been that attitude, and I've either punched them or just left the band. So leaving's a lot easier than hurting my hands. Then I can't play shit. So I don't go for that. But I'm, like I said, I'm a champion where I don't care if it's simple. I don't care if you're complex. Just do what you do and record it. And I don't care if you have your iPhone, you're recording it with your iPhone, just do it because there's nobody telling you can't. And, some people can. I mean, some people aren't fortunate. Some people are just, like you say, they're just drummers. You're a guitar player, but you're a writer, but you play bass. And if you had a kit sitting around, you'd be playing drums. You would force yourself to do it because it's fun and it's exercise. And if you have good meter when you're playing to a click or not playing to a click, you could sit down and you can play drums along with it. And how long's McCartney been doing that? Right. Holy shit, since day one. So, and it's all, like I said, it goes back to the insecurities of like, hey, I could do that. No one's telling me I can't do that. F you, I'll do what I want. That's pretty much it. And if you try to be macho and say, well, I play drums because that's all I could do. And I'm the best at what I do. You know what? Reach out a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Attitude has a lot to do with it.
Good point. Yeah. Another thing you touched on as well just now about, audio production, how it sounds. Yeah. But, which is really, I think, something I get tripped up on all the time. So much so that, Mark, that the last two years maybe has really been my journey into really discovering what this is all about. Mainly, I think, I want to learn. I want to be able to do it. I want to take care of myself. I want to be able to record my own music. I want to record these songs, and not just have it all for me, but just be able to do it. I think it's just like another one of those sort of string to your bow sense of things. Yeah. But me and my buddy Matt, I mean, I drove myself crazy so much so that this EP I did, we re-recorded it 3 times, the whole thing. Just because I just was never satisfied. Yeah, that's me.
That's normal though, by the way.
Yeah, I guess it just
but it's not normal to be that obsessive about it.
Right.
There's a point in time when you got to say that vocal could have been better, but at least the pitch is there and maybe the feeling's not, but it works with the track. And you don't want to think about somebody listening going, oh, he fucked up that part.
Right.
No one's going to say that.
Too much
they
8K.
And I'm as OCD as the next person, and I have ADD. So it's like when I can't focus, at least I try to be perfect at what I'm not focusing on, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I mean, there was a time when I was so vocal after vocal after vocal. And then when I did the Power Slide record in 96, after I left Gilby Clarke's band, I said, I hate this. I don't want to do this. I'm going to do my own record. And Vivian Campbell told me, I'm leaving on tour with Leopard. You can use a studio at my place. And it wasn't much of a studio. And it's not like because he's Viv, you would think he'd have this elaborate setup. It really wasn't. It was just a desk with a Mackie 24/8 board, 2 ADATs, old tape, digital tape machines, 2 JBL home monitor speakers, and 1 U87 mic, 1 SM58, 1 SM57, and I brought in 2 Radio Shack PZM plate mics from like 78 or 79, which I still have, and they kick ass. That's all I had. And he's like, just, use it whenever you want. So he gave me this security gate passcode and this and that. And Julie, I knew his ex-wife really well. And I'd be over there like every day, man, for months. And I'd be recording whatever I could. And it sounded very indie lo-fi. And then I said, well, can I live with this? And there were songs that sat there over and over again. Well, the drums, man, that kick could be a little bit, because I only used like maybe a front of the kick, 1 back from the snare, and then 2 PZMs on either side, duct taped to pieces of plywood for my room, for my pseudo overheads, because I didn't really have overheads. I had that 87. Sometimes I put that over the top. Minimal is better in so many cases. And that's when guys, email me or like give me something to mix, and then it's got freaking 29 tracks, 28 tracks of drum, like, the drums. I'm like, what the dude? Really? Do you really, is this Rush's Hemispheres record? Because this absolutely does not fit you guys. And who's using this? And how the hell did you have that many inputs to begin with?
Right.
So I don't get that. I mean, Andy Johns, he had it down with a couple of mics, and I would read. That's what I tell people with home studios is read these producers' bios, find a production book. Don't get a Berkeley book on, Pro Tools learning or engineering or this and that. There was a book, I think it was called like The Producers or something like that in the 80s. It had like all these interviews with, Ted Templeman, George Martin, Andy Wallace, or, some Matt Wallace, Jimmy Iovine. I mean, all these like a dozen great producers. And man, when I read that, I wanted to run out and try everything that they did. That was a huge motivation. And I suggest that to anyone is don't be so anal about every little frequency and everything else. Just read what they did. And if you have the means of doing it, just try it, because that's what an erase button is for. If it sucks, just freaking delete it from your drive, or else save it and go, it all sounded like crap, but those overheads kicked ass. Write down everything you do. Write down your mic utility, whether it's on an amp or, I've got a Royer here, I got a Royer right here, and I got a 57 right here. They're in phase, blah, 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 or this and that. Write down how distances and stuff like that. That's as anal as you should be, because if you don't remember something and you're in a hurry to record a song, at least have it written down like, oh shit, what did I do for that guitar? The second guitar, did I have the same miking on it? And, have those little cheat sheets down, because you're going to come back to them later on and go, yeah, especially if it's a song that kicks ass. I mean, I made the mistake of, on the solo record, I have 2 songs that I did drums on. Number 1, I didn't write down which of my drum kits I used.
I
which was a
do that
huge
all the time as well. I always forget to write down what guitars I use on things, and then I'm
that.
like,
Don't do that anymore.
yeah, I know. Yeah.
Don't do it anymore. If you have a go-to, you know what it is.
Right.
But if you have like, oh shit, I'm using this telly and I'm going through this AC30 or whatever the hell you're going through, it's like, oh, that sounds great. Or if you're going through native, because I use Guitar Rig a lot, because number one, when I got the bundle, like the newest Guitar Rig, if you manipulate it, it sounds pretty good. The only thing you don't get is you don't get the punch of pushing air with a real guitar amp on a mic.
Right.
You won't get that. You'll get perfection kind of, but you can mess with it a little bit to get it to sound really good. And with, like I said before, with me doing TV and film stuff and submitting a lot of things, I'm kind of in a hurry. So even though I always have because I have an AC10, AC15, I have, which everybody laughs at. Vivian laughed at it at first, then he played through it and shut his mouth. Is this, I have this crate amp. It's a crate 50-watt tube amp.
Yeah.
It's Palomino, it's called Palomino 50. That freaking amp, even though it's a hybrid, it's okay. It's 212. It's their version of an AC30. The pots crackle like crazy. I have to spray them all the time. It's bullshit. I've had it looked at. Half my amp guys are like, oh, I'm not working on that Chinese amp. Oh, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, amp whore, shut up. So that amp sounds great. So I have certain go-tos if I'm using an amp, or I have my buddy Manny Alvarez, who's an amazing freaking guitar player who can play anything. And he's the greatest guy, one of my closest friends. He'll bring over one of 8 million amps that he has. and I can plug it in. I can mic it up, plug it in, not do anything. And it's like, oh my God, why couldn't I get that? Okay. He's a guitar player. I'm not. I still call myself a hack because I'm not a guitar player. And the fingers matter. And when Manny plays, I'm like, holy crap, this sounds amazing. So yeah, I mean, keeping a tight lock on what you're doing with minimal gear or whatever you have. I mean, I've always been a champion of that. If people make fun and say, well, you don't have a Telefunken? No, you want to give me 10 grand so I could buy one? I mean, literally, I've get snobs in here. I'm not going to mention their names, but I did a couple records and I had a producer in here who he's had a few hits and he's pretty well known, but attitude, and his engineer came in here and all he did was like criticize what I had. And I went, do you have to work on it?
Yeah.
No, then shut up.
Yeah.
Because you're
killing my vibe, man.
He already fucked it up like the first 10 minutes of meeting him. And I was like, dude, if you want me to bring a kit where you are, I'll go to your studio. You know, you don't need to come in here and throw an attitude when I'm making your life easier with an already mic'd up kit in my living room. It sounds amazing. And just plug in your freaking drive and shut your mouth. And those are the sessions that no one wants. But yeah, the snobbery, there's no room for that anymore in this day and age. Jesus Christ. No. I mean, you can't be a snob. I mean, otherwise you would get on, Billie Eilish and her brother who do shit in their bedroom. That sounds fucking amazing. And the guy, the guy's a Grammy winner. She's a Grammy winner in a bedroom smaller than this little 18 by 18 studio that I have.
Dude, it blows my mind. It blows my mind.
Like her or anything like that or not, you have to respect the fact that it sounds really good.
It sounds amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I do like her. I think
I do too.
I like the songs. I love them.
The simplicity, her tone. I mean, her brother's amazing too. And the stuff that he does is amazing. So, I mean, I have huge props and respect for that. I can't be the old boomer asshole, get off my lawn. This sounds like shit. Go back to old school. That doesn't apply. I hate guys like that. It's like guys that just won't hang it up. This kind of stuff is done. You need to move on. I've always tried to wear 10 different hats and try to fit in with whatever's good and keep my mind open, because as soon as you close that off and become a snob, you're done. Yeah. I think the cake is flattened out and you're just done and move on to something else. But
so speaking of, amazing sounding productions, I love asking the question of, can you think of a song that doesn't have, you know, maybe doesn't hold up production wise, but it doesn't matter because the song is just absolutely incredible. You know, which is ultimately basically crushes down this whole podcast and the reason why we tweak knobs and all that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, if the song's amazing, that really will shine through, won't it?
The subjectiveness of it, though, that's where it comes into play too, because what we think may not be great could be great, like we tapped on earlier, could be great to someone else.
Exactly.
I always thought the Wings Band on the Run album is one of the most crappiest produced records I've ever heard. It's thin. There's no bottom end.
Yeah.
They can remaster it till tomorrow. And it's still, to me, those songs are so freaking good on that record. And then I listened to it going, what is wrong with this? Is it a cocaine mix? I mean, because usually a Coke mix is all mid-range, no bottom and top end.
I didn't know that was a kind of mix, but
that is a mix. No, 80s, if you hear 80s mixes, like, okay, I'll beat them up. But again, I'll use Vivian Campbell as a reference. Yeah. Some of those Dio records, which were Coke mixes, are full-on just sharp-edged, mid-range, high-end mixes. And it's all NS10s biting your freaking head off. And there's no body and spread on it. It's just all pointed and right here. And that just, God, that makes me mad. It just, and you know, those guys are sitting there, half the board's loaded with Coke and half the board is faders. So but that was a big thing at the Record Plant, was a Coke studio. Right. Sound City was a Coke studio for a while. They weren't endorsed by Coke, but they were Coke studios. Right, and it's like, it just cracks me up because a lot of those bad metal 80s mixes had that going on. And oh my God, it could have been better, you know? But yeah, but I'd say that's the one that annoys me, because when I hear the song itself, Band on the Run, I go, oh my God, I would love to get in and get the freaking raw tracks and remixes. But that's like, and I think Cheap Trick agrees that In Color, which is a pretty hit record for Cheap Trick at the time, I think it was their third record. Yeah. Or second record. That's pretty thin too. But there's certain things like, and when I say thin, I just mean exactly that. I mean thin, and not a good, thick, beefy mix where sonically you can hear everything, you know, and that's so important to hear the grind of the bass and the fatness of the bass. And, you know, and it just, yeah, that'd be, there's a lot of older mixes that came out and I went, how did that get released? I don't understand that. Did you,
okay, that was going to be my next question. When it came out, let's say, you know, an album like In Color, Cheap Trick came out, did you at the time hear that and say, this isn't that great? Or is it in hindsight now?
No, because I was so in love with the band, they could have shit on vinyl and I would have bought it. Yeah. Because that's the thing about a fan. It doesn't matter. You can put out something that is just adequate and your fans are going to go, oh, but that's him,
why
I love him. Yeah. And I love the songs and it has all that going on.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only been a few productions that have come out where I think myself and hundreds of millions of other people listened to when it first came out and went, holy shit. And that was like Van Halen's first album, because they went, wow, what the hell? It was so live. And his guitar, no guitars ever sounded like Eddie Van Halen's guitar to that point.
Right.
Page sounded like Page, but it wasn't that thick wall of sound that they had going on. And Ted Templeman was that was groundbreaking for Ted Templeman, because prior to that, doing Montrose and doing a few other bands, that was like, I don't think Ted could ever outdo that. Anything Van Halen that he touched was gold. And that sound, and a lot of that, yes, it's, 90% Eddie, but the production, he captured exactly what we heard when, like, my friends and I would see them at the Starwood in Hollywood, or the clubs, or the Gazaris, or backyard party. Even in backyard parties, they sounded fat and thick. But when that came out, it was what you saw. Like, if you were a fan in Hollywood at the time and you were into Van Halen and really like, my God, I'm so glad they got a deal. I can't wait to hear that record. And when the record came out, it was like, that sounds like Van Halen, and nothing could touch it at that time.
I kind of imagine that the reason why, yeah, it sounds so good is like you say, it captured what the band was,
Hmm.
and that sound of them playing live. When I when you think of when I think of Van Halen, I think of a big reverby guitar, but not reverby in the sense of it's an effect.
Yeah,
Reverby in the sense that it's filling an arena of
yeah,
like you say, a wall of sound, a big fat G chord, or Eddie's leads playing. But then that did get captured on record, didn't it? Because they did
yeah,
the guitar on one side and then the
yeah.
reverb on
Drums
the
and
other
bass on the
side.
other.
So you
With yeah,
did get that arena sound.
yes, you did. And
How
it's funny
clever
because
is that?
and when I remember being when that first came out, I remember sitting there with headphones in a living room. My dad didn't want to ever hear that stuff because he was a jazz big band guy.
Right.
So I would put on this big old cans, the old school cans, and I'd listen to it, and I'd purposely pan it all the way over. And I think it was if I panned it to the left, my left, uh, it was bass and drums
Hmm.
mostly, and you heard the echo of the guitar, and I thought,
Right.
man, that's cool. And then as soon as you run dead center on it, you're like, wow, he was risky to do that. I mean, Ted, that's a big move because that's almost like when the Beatles did all drums on one side and guitars kind of split, and then the vocal completely hard panned on the other side, like in the whether it was Sergeant Pepper's or something earlier than that, where they tried to do these crazy ass pannings. That's what it was in the 70s. That's what it was like when they were experimenting in the 60s doing that, because stereo was such a new thing,
Mm.
and then when Ted did that, everybody kind of went, why would he try to do that? It just sounds like such an experimental thing. I don't know if that's going to fly in a stereo world with people with car stereos. What if one of their speakers goes out? Well,
Right.
tough shit. You're going to get bass and drums in and some echoey vocals. I mean,
But the bass and drums still sound amazing.
yeah, it still sounded like them live,
Yeah.
and oh yeah, that was magical. But oh yeah, there's quite a few that I would love to. I mean, and I'm nobody really in this game. I'm just another guy
Oh,
trying to do it.
you are.
But but there's so many things I've listened to and going, oh god, this is not good, and I don't know why they would release that because a flat thing for a lot of fans are if they get behind a band that just gets a deal and they can't wait for the record to come out like we did with Van Halen, but that was an opposite thing. But when they hear it, they go, wow, that doesn't even sound like the band I used to see in clubs.
Mm.
You know what I mean? That can really, that really throws something on you as well. But I think producer's job is to capture and get the best out of that artist, not manipulate it and make it sound like you want it to sound.
Mm-hmm.
There are those asshole producers that do that, and I can't stand that,
Mm-hmm.
where they just take a band and destroy it.
Right.
How many times have you heard our rough mixes sound 10 times better than the record does? Oh my god. Uh, I don't know. I've heard that a lot. There's a couple tracks on the Gilby, the Pawn Shop Guitars record Gilby did,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a few on there that I kind of like, wow, that didn't sound like when we were playing in the clubs at all.
Right.
It
Right. How
sounded actually
interesting.
it sounded more clean. It was too pristine. Gilby's a punk rocker, he's not like a Guns N' Roses guitar player. He's a punk rock guy, pop guy first. He's another big Cheap Trick Beatles fan.
Mm.
And everybody's, he just gets associated with Guns N' Roses because he played with Guns for a while.
Yeah.
But that is not his love, his
Mm.
first love. He was fortunate to get that gig. But yeah, I mean, when we went out and it was him and I, our bass player, Will, and a few other people that came in, Joe Dog from Dogs D'Amour, Joe
Right.
Almeida, he was the original guitar player.
Oh, right.
And he played slide, and we were really trashy. It
Mm.
was a trashy kind of dirgy, Stones-ish, Cheap Tricky kind of band, and it just worked. And then by the time Waddy Wachtel came in to do put on the production hat on that record, things started cleaning up a little bit too much to my liking, and I think
Hmm.
Gilby wouldn't admit that ever.
Mm.
I don't give a shit, so I will admit it. And
Mm.
it was, I think that was one thing that with us as a band, although not many people cared, because that was like when we came out with that record, Gilby came out with that record, that was kind of the decline of Guns. Everything was falling apart. We would tour, not even 16th of the people would be in the house if we played a theater or a club. It was pathetic. Canada was great and Europe was great. And but South America was great. But here in the States, no one gave a shit. But the band live, you ask anyone who was a fan or not a fan that saw us live in 95 and 99, early part, actually 94 through 95, they would go, holy shit, they were huge sounding. And it was a huge sounding band because we were all friends since the 80s. And that's what people don't realize. It wasn't like Gilby had to pick up any session guys to come in and play. So we knew we were so ready to record by the time that we came in, we didn't need pre-production.
Right.
That's the whole thing. We played these songs 50, 60 times already. So, and rehearsed and just jammed and played Cheap Trick and Beatles songs all day long. We never played Gilby songs at all. Gilby didn't want to. He's like, I'd rather do covers. I'm like, okay, but it's your record. So you got to go out and promote your record. Oh, no, let's do this. Okay. So, I mean, the production wise, yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of things that have come out that I went, that's a polished version of a really good band and it shouldn't be polished. Yes, if it's out of tune, sure, fix that. Tune your guitar, tune your bass, put new drum heads on your drums. And if there's a blatant mistake, sure, record it again, just keep doing it. Don't fix it. That kills me about drum. This is why I don't do a lot of sessions anymore when it comes to Pro Tools, Logic, whatever, is because I can give you could send me a stem of a guitar part. Mark, could you put drums on this? Sure. I'll give you like 5, 6, 7, 8 takes, whatever it takes of that song. I'll send it to you. So if I do a fill that might be a little laid back, or I'll do sub fill, and you'll take it and you'll either get rid of it,
get all the
time correct it, align it, take this waveform and slide it over here a little bit, do this and that. I'm like, that's not me.
Yeah,
that's not me playing. So you could have really just used slate drums and recorded some drums over it, or done whatever. So it's kind of hard, but there's too many. I think there's too many choices now.
Oh, dude, there definitely is. Do I really need another 1176 plug-in? Do I, Mark? I don't.
I know, it's like it comes up as a freaking menu. They make one. I use my UA one, I think, more than any.
Right.
Or I have a hard one down here, and it's like, do I use the rack or do this? And it's like, nah, fuck it, whatever. I don't care. I'll use this old one from Sound Toys. I don't know. Yeah. It's just, everybody makes one.
Yeah, I don't think if that's really what it comes down to. And maybe that's just why we just do this. But I'm yet to get anyone send me a message saying, I wish you used this plugin company's version of that
oh my
76.
God. Yeah.
Why, but we agonize over hours, don't we? But no one cares. I mean, no one cares to that extent is what I really mean. Of course people care, but
Well, Logic, you touched on Logic.
Yeah.
And my son he's like a genius at Logic.
Wow, cool.
I mean, he's amazing at Logic, and he's been using it since day one. And for the bang for your buck, you can't beat Logic, because even their plugins are amazing.
Yeah.
And whether it's an auto-tune type of plugin, or it's this and that, or a compressor or a limiter, or an EQ, or something for mastering, or something's just going to pump out and, highlight what you have. There's so many plugins where you don't really need, especially if you're on a budget, you don't really need to go out and buy a Waves bundle for $1,500 and then sign up to their stupid subscription thing. I mean, It's just ridiculous. Any subscription thing is just freaking bullshit. Pro Tools tries to trap me into that every year.
Yeah.
Like an idiot. I do it because I have Ultimate HD, and it's like their big baby. Now I regret getting Native when I should have got HDX, which I will hopefully in the next year or two, for a few reasons. So anyway, but the Logic thing, there's so much on there. You really don't need to get these other outside, plugins. If there's no, I won't say. Okay, if there's a crack somewhere, which is they're getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah.
And I'm not into doing cracks. I'd rather legitimately pay for a plugin.
Yeah.
But my son, since he's not here, and I'll talk shit about him, he's gotten a few cracks that are great. Right. And he likes them, but he does a lot of beat stuff or R&B things. He does a lot of melodies, but he also is the type of person that he gets bored and then he'll say, you know, country's stupid and it's easy. I'm like, well, no, it's not stupid to a country guy. So don't say country music is stupid, because
Right.
there's a whole bunch of people that love it. He goes, it's so easy. So he'll go, you know, he's an amazing musician, writer himself. He'll go do this country song and he'll put it up on, you know, through TuneCore on Spotify. And it sounds like anything that's great coming out of Nashville. And he's doing it on his earbuds with
Ugh.
his laptop, with his laptop.
Yeah.
And then he don't, and I'm like, you know, since COVID hit, you've been here for a year, you know, because they wanted to get out of the apartment. His girlfriend went to her place. He's here.
Mhm.
He does shit on his buds in the front room. And then I'm like, you could come and mix in the studio, you know? I mean, 100 feet away, we have this recording studio. He's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm good. I'm like, really? He goes,
There
no,
you go.
and it's like, that's the generation now, though. It's because I don't need that. I don't need it. It sounds good like it is. And sure as shit, he'll play it for me. And I'm like, wow, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Even him, you know, he's a drummer, but even programming drums the way he does, because he's a drummer and he has the feel of a drummer, he
Mm.
knows that certain fills would be impossible. Because I know a lot of guys will record drums and, you know, the kick and snare going when the toms are going.
Oh, that's
And
me.
it's like,
I'm that guy.
instead of going ba-da boom ba boom ba boom ba 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 ba, you know, it'll be like, and you're still going. A drummer can't play the hats and hit those toms and the snare at the same time unless he's double sticking the hat and the snare,
Yeah,
going
yeah,
like
yeah.
this and juggling. That doesn't work. But he has it where I can listen to it and I try to find that fault. And he's like, he'll you find it? Oh no, he goes, yeah, it's because I know what I'm doing. Little smart ass.
Yeah,
Right?
there you go.
So okay, but no, I mean that's the beauty of nowadays guys with their own DAWs and
Mm.
you know, being functional enough to do it. And you know, if the
Mm.
tune, you know, if his vocals are a little weird, then he'll mess with that and, you know, straighten it out so it doesn't sound like, you know, auto-tune, R&B auto-tune, but it sounds, you know, okay, didn't quite hit that. He'll just put it there. He's real precise about doing it. And I love that. And which is another, you know, huge thing with DAWs now and software, is that you can really, if you take your time and knowing what that piece of software can do, it's a magical thing,
Mm.
you know? Oh yeah. I mean, like I said, I've had this for a while, and I tried to get into Logic, and I just couldn't do it because it's two train
Yeah,
things.
you've
You know, I've been doing
spent
this
so
for
much
20,
time. Yeah.
21, 22 years on Pro Tools, and then you throw something new at me. No, old dog can't learn new tricks. It just doesn't work that way to a lot of people. And it's not stubbornness. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating.
It's the hassle. It's the hassle of, you
Yeah.
know, when you're so used to something. That's why, Mark, you
Yeah.
pay the Pro Tools subscription when you get the email every year, because it's too much hassle to
Oh,
look
and
into.
trust me,
You know, just pay it. Come on.
and trust me, it's like my friend, my buddy Mike, he has a standard version of Pro Tools.
Mm.
Like, I don't know, it's $199, $299 or whatever you pay for the software, but he runs everything through an Apollo 8,
Mm-hmm.
which is an amazing product in itself. UA can do no wrong. I mean, anything UA does,
Seemingly, yeah.
it's pricey, but it's so worth it, because, you know, having the capabilities of having a UA, an Apollo 8 or an Apollo 16 or whatever it is, the plugins usable on the front end, that changed the world.
Yeah, tracking
you know,
in with them.
in with them. And because I can't do that. You know, if I do vocals or guitars or whatever, I want compression on. I mean, I have a lot of compressors, and I'll go in through an acoustic, through a compressor in. If I do maybe stereo room mics in this little room, you know, for drums, I'll squash it, you know. But to be able to have individual channels and a new, you know, up to 5 or whatever it is, different effects going in per track is amazing to me. And when they came out with that, that was groundbreaking. And now Avid's trying to do it now.
Mm.
And I forget what it's called, but and I'm sure I won't buy it. But with the Ultimate HD, you know, with the native system that I have, you know, I had to pay a fortune for it, because my HD system with, you know, 3 cards, HD3 system, I had for years, since 2000. And it took a crap 6 years ago. For some reason, there was a power spike. It blew out my power, but it affected my, like, I had a G4 or whatever, old Mac. it blew that out, blew the cards out. Everything died, and I couldn't get it back. So I virtually lost the system I paid $21,000 for at the time. You know, it died, and I had to get another computer. So I went to Westlake Audio, and it's not a pitch for Westlake Audio here in LA, but Westlake Audio, they're good guys, and they really know their shit. They're like the LA, they're the LA Sweetwater, you know.
Right.
But they're really nice guys. They hooked me up. I got a great deal on a new iMac fully loaded, and another engineer friend of mine told me, yeah, get the HD native Avid, the Adobe Pro Tools, and because it's just unlimited tracks and this and that, but there's a lot of drawbacks he didn't tell me about. So I got that, and it was not even close to being the price of what I paid for my original Avid gear, which was DigiDesign when I got it. But now it's like, they stick you for that subscription fee is like, what do I pay? $3.99 a freaking year. And for unlimited tech support, which is great, but I don't need it that much.
Right.
And if I did, I'd probably only pay $50. If I didn't have a subscription plan, I wouldn't get the updates on Pro Tools. I wouldn't get the free plugins that are useless that I'll never use. Sound effect stuff, which is great, and Foley and things like that, and other new things that they come out with. It's very rare, but it's just a racket to me, that these companies like Waves and like them and a few other, just like photographers with Photoshop, have to get the subscription deals now. And it just, I don't agree with it.
Yeah, it's locking you in somehow.
I like owning something, I don't want to make payments on my car. I'd like to own my car, but it's, that type of thing. And but they tell me it's like, well, you can either, before, if you didn't pay that yearly subscription fee, you had, you can always pay it within 6 months afterwards at that same price. Now they make you pay for the whole software that you have if you do not pay the subscription rate. So if I didn't pay the $3.99, I'd have to end up paying $1,200 to get back on the subscription plan, because I have to pay for my software again. And I'm like, wow, extortion much?
I guess this is not a good time to say that this episode is sponsored by Avid and Waves.
No, it's not. I'm just going to tell the truth, and they can come after me if they want to.
Good for you. Yeah,
I don't care. I really don't care.
Good for you.
I'm sure there's people out there feel the same way
I do. Yeah, I'm sure there is. I'm sure
I'm
there
the guy
Facebook
to say it,
groups
but I'm the guy to get in trouble for it. That's all right. Fuck it. I'm not a rock star. You can't get rock star money out of me, so kiss my ass. I don't have that.
Well, look, I've got one more question for you. But it's been such a wonderful catch up and conversation, and the best thing about that, you would always think editing a podcast or editing something like this is quite a lot of hassle, and there is editing to do, but I love it because I always catch things I never caught, and I get to relearn every single time. So I really, really enjoy it. I know I'm going to learn.
You could just edit out me beating up companies if you like, and just put like a I don't know, put like some birds chirping or singing in the background when it happens, or a cow.
Yeah, some waves, actual ocean waves.
Actual waves.
Yeah.
And just put a lockup or something, or some like a bad tones. Just put tones in where I'm saying, well, that company could do. It's all good. All good.
But
no, I'm glad we talked, because it's like, I'm really, I'm a fan of what you do song wise and writing wise. And I love, you know me, I'm a power pop freak.
Yeah.
So I love that stuff. And I hopefully we're going to be able to do, and I'll get on this one collaboration we're kind of working on, and we do more of that.
Well, we should definitely write a song.
Yes.
I think we should do a song and pioneer it from our own, respective places of work here, our own studios, and send it back and forth. I think that would be really fun.
I'd love that.
But one more question for you. Can you think, and I guess I'm putting you on the spot here, but can you think whether it's been, recording in different studios in the 80s, or whether it's been someone sent you a mix to do? I'm all about vulnerability, really, about with Can't Afford to Record, and the idea of like, no one's got it figured out, right? No one, we're all learning all the time. We're always learning about everything, and we take each experience and we get better because of that experience, and we put that into our future work. So can you think of a time where I'm going to just throw this out as an example, I guess. But you've mixed someone's song, and I don't know, you left a backing vocal out, and they sent it and have it mastered,
Oh,
or
yeah.
something has happened where you've been like, man, do you know what? I learned from that, and we on a regular basis, I'm still learning from it. Maybe that
Yeah.
was a lame example, but hopefully you
No,
can
no.
see what I'm trying to say here.
No, I mean, there's things I touch back on. There's one, I will recommend one book that's out. I think it's called Pro Tools Ignite.
Okay.
And I think they even have a Logic Ignite, but Berkeley had a series of books out, and they're kind of like textbooks, but it's from a couple well-known engineers that either teach at Berkeley or whatever. But
Mm.
I highly recommend those. I've done stuff. I have a friend, Mark McCracken, really good buddy. We work together we write, and we're doing this podcast show. Hopefully that will come out. We have like 12 or 13 episodes done. Me, this
Oh,
other
wow.
guy, John Kearns. It's funny. It has nothing to do with music. It's called This Year in History, and we just pick any year,
Yeah.
any year. It could be 1620, it could be 1970, and then we either find the highlights of that year,
Yeah.
things that went on around that time, comedy. It's stupid. It's funny. It's serious. We
Mm.
camp on it. It's mostly like an improv
That's awesome.
comedy thing. So anyway, Mark, who started this whole thing, Mark McCracken, he's a singer songwriter, but he writes these little 2.5 minute, sometimes 3.5 minute pop ditties. And I always liked what he did. And 4 years ago, I said, you need to come in and record this stuff because it's really good. And he's like, no, it's not. It sucks. I go, no, that's your perspective on it because you're doing it. Everyone, I think half the stuff I wrote, I could go back in and redo, I mean, that's just us.
Right.
So, we did record, I did like 6 songs with them, and I'll let it go. I listened to it for a little bit and I go, yeah, the blend seems good. The snare maybe could come up a little bit. His acoustic, he's a little out of the pocket sometimes on the click. Am I going to get really anal or just make it more real and organic and not worry so much about that?
Mm-hmm.
If it's fighting the drums, which might be because I'm a laid back on the click drummer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't push a click at all. I'm usually back on it. And I get to the chorus and I'd ride on it. I mean, to me, aside from me being a drummer, I'll not be a drummer for a minute, but a good drummer can play to a click and make it sound real and not be so sterile and syncopated with a click. It's just ridiculous. I mean, you should really, like, when you're jamming with a band, you tend to push on a chorus and beef it up a little bit and then come back a little on a verse, and then who knows what the bridge is going to do, the middle section. So I've listened back, like not listened to it for a year, to Mark's stuff that we've done. And then I'll come back and I'll play the first song we did to the last song we did. And then going, wow, I may have to run in and make these sound as good as the last ones we did, because it was just kind of feeling out what he's all about. Maybe I rushed, because I'm the first guy to admit I'm always in a hurry to hear what it sounds like before it's done. It's like, I want to see the painting. I want to see it all painted before I start putting the primer on. As soon as I put the primer on, I have it in my head.
You're gating the toms before you even really...
I've already got sheets over the drum kit, and the amps are already on, and I haven't even touched the guitars yet. So it's like, you always have this thing in your head, whether it's a fantasy or it's what you expect to hear. And then the other side of your brain is like, I hear this artist sounding more like this artist, so I want to try to capture that kind of a feel towards the production. So what I'm trying to say is there's too much crap going on in your head and too many expectations. So now you have to just breathe and be your own best psychologist and go one at a time. If it's a one person coming in here, like he's a singer songwriter, he's got his acoustic with him, I'll mic him up. I'll have him play to a click. And if he's having trouble with the click, I go, how about, let me do this. Let me just play a little pity pad on the drums with the click. I'll loop it, and you can play to the real drums that make you feel more comfortable, like you're with a drummer. Whatever it takes to get you to feel comfortable is more important to me than being engineer guy. So I will do a few passes. If he's good about doing a punch in it, he can play before it, and I can just roll in a punch on him. Then I'll do that. Okay. As soon as he's down, He goes home, and then I freaking put on every hat. And okay, so what's next? I'll try different kind of drum grooves, here and there. So that case, but I always have a kit mic'd. So all I do is really change out the drums. If I need a bigger kick and I've got a 22 inch, and I said, well, this needs to be stupid big. So I'm going to bring in the 28 or the 26, and I'll get the big Bonhamy kind of sound on this, or just something a little bit more alternative than what the norm is, and just mic it on the outside and not mic it on the inside. So I have to figure out, because when I do a song, I'm not the guy like most, remember the old days of production, a band would come into a studio or an artist, and they'd set up for that whole album. Everything would be mic'd exactly as it is, and they would just come in the next day, like with Gilby's album, aside from switching out snare drums, everything was the same.
Yeah, don't touch anything, guys. Leave everything alone.
Leave it go. Put tape across the board. Oh my God, we can't have anything happen. So I don't think that way. I think, and Zeppelin was a great example of that, and the Beatles. They're going to do a country style song, and it's going to be acoustics and, maybe a slide guitar and just, no drums, or maybe him percussion, he's just playing like a freaking box or a tabletop or whatever. But it makes that song original and not the same old, instead of having a Bon Jovi record, which you listen to track 1 all the way to the end, everything is the same, just the song is different. And I like painting pictures with songs where I don't want everything the same. Even on my solo stuff, I'll record every song that I do will not be the same. I'll change it up every freaking time. Oh, it's just so much effort changing mics and changing tones, and you want it all to sound cohesive. It'll sound cohesive if you're recording it correctly and if you're mastering it correctly, because if it's all the same volume on the mastering end without brick wall squashing the shit out of it, it's originality. It's something that's unique, and it has a hook, and that's the thing that I miss now, is those different hooks on songs, whether it's a certain drum beat that he plays or whether it's a guitar in the background. Here's an odd story, and I don't know how much time you have.
We got time.
Foreigner, it feels like the first Foreigner record. When I first heard that, what stuck out to me on that song more than anything about hearing that, not that it's just a good power pop rock song.
Yeah.
The thing that stuck out to me was the second verse. He's going, he's doing this real plucky thing on the second verse. And it's got a phase, maybe it's got a phase on it, but he's just doing this plucky thing. And I'm like, holy shit, that's really funky. And this is a rock song, but that popped out that second verse.
It lifted it up. It wasn't just the same the first verse. That's what you got to do each time for these pop rock stuff, man, isn't it? You got to, like, a tabourine's got to come in, or a shaker has got to happen, or
you had to build that song.
Yes.
And that, when I heard that, I went, wow, Mick, that's great. And no, of course, none of my other friends that I went to high school with were like, oh, I don't give a shit. They just kick ass. I'm like, okay, I know, because you're not musicians. You don't get it, really. You're fans. But it's things like that, or, a certain beat, but how it's recorded makes that song, but it also makes it an original thing and not just a bass, drums, guitar, vocal rock song, and I there's a million examples of that, and certain hooks that are in songs. Supremes, Baby Love, loudest thing in that fucking mix. I think the hand claps are the loudest things in that freaking mix. The drums are in the back. The bass, guitars, their vocals are up, but it's ooh, baby love. Oh, baby. It's like, wow, they were like right on the freaking mic, louder than the vocals, but no one really pays attention to that. They just think it's a groove thing, but I do. And I'm sure now when you hear it, you're going to go, I want to hear Baby Love. I want to hear that now. So it's little things like that people need to lean on more so than, whether it's a newer artist that's doing, R&B indie stuff where it's all virtual based, and they have like a groove and it's just all keyboard based and maybe there's some guitar on it, but a lot of it's so straightened out and so click. and it's adding a few things, certain elements, so like whether it's a sound, that matters,
It really is sprinkling the magic on. I know that sounds so
No,
cliched and so
no,
so overused, but that is it. There's a band that I love called Alkaline Trio. Do you know Alkaline
I've heard
Trio?
of them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
amazing. As the name would suggest, trio punk rock. The lead singer, the lead guitarist and the bass player both share lead vocals.
Oh, cool.
So and it alternates each
Oh, that's
song pretty
awesome though.
much on every album too, right? Like
Wow.
our buddy Mike Fasano has done a few of their albums and all
Oh
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And here's something, and I really need to look into it, but I only discovered this the other day. Their voices are so incredibly different, which is why I love it. But
Right.
I realized on a song I've heard however many millions of times on the choruses, the mixing engineer, he's fading their vocals up and down throughout the
Wow.
chorus, and I'm pretty sure they're doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
I never noticed it before, and I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks on me or if it's actually happening, but I can hear now that the vocals are ever so slightly changing and their voices are so different that it must be ever so subtle. But regardless if that's even happening or not, or whether it's me making it up, I now love that song for a whole new reason.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Because it's
it's
almost
those
like
little things.
a best kept secret that the secret got out of the bag.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to know it, but oh damn it, now I know it, and
Yeah.
now you love it even more. It's the same. Yeah,
Or realizing like, oh my god, that cowbell is in tune with the song.
that's true too. That's
And
true
why
too.
would you ever think about it? But when you obsess
Yeah,
over this sort of stuff, you there might be songs you hate, but because when you realize what they did,
yeah.
you're like, I love that song now. That's it.
See, Jack Douglas was king of doing that as far as production wise, because he did it with Aerosmith, early Aerosmith, the first
Mm,
Cheap Trick record. Um, Jack is one of those guys that loves to experiment with different tones and different sounds. And there's been things that I learned from that early stuff. I had a band in '84 called Ashes. We were a
mm,
three-piece band. And it was a, I can't, we weren't really derivative, but I would say, people would listen to it and say, wow, you guys sound like a Brit rock band from the '80s. You guys
mm-hmm,
sound like U2 and The Alarm and all those other
mm-hmm,
bands, but you're not, you're an American band. And there was a lot of labels looking at us at that time. And we were a three-piece. I would share lead vocals with the bass player. So guitar player didn't sing at all. He just did his thing, went crazy and ran around. He was great at what he did, but we were so energetic. So when we went in and did our demo for A&M, the two guys that were doing it were more engineers than they were producers. So they didn't have
mm,
any ideas. So it was up to Curtis, the lead singer, bass player, and myself, and Gordon, the guitar player. It's kind of up to us to build our songs. What are we going to do recording wise? We sound huge as a three-piece. How can we convey this?
mm,
But we would, we were doing tricks, little, weird things. Like there was a lot of stuff, like different guitar parts that he would do. And we didn't have a baritone guitar. So I would take my sticks and open up the grand piano and I'd hit the guitar strings. I mean, the bass
yeah.
strings on the piano itself. And we record that and I would just double what the bass player was doing. And,
Wow.
just because we could and no one
Yeah.
said we couldn't. And the engineer's like, well, that's kind of stupid, but let's try it.
Mm,
But it's not, dude. It's something. If we're going to be here and it's spec time and you guys don't give a shit what we spend because A&M's paying you, let
yeah.
us do whatever we want to for a month.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we did. And, laying drums, on the floor and using a floor tom as a kick drum because it was kind of wide open and boomy. Recording, me doing 12 different snare marching kind of things, I mean, just having fun.
Sound
Because
design.
yeah, and it really should be fun.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, it shouldn't be uptight when you're recording a song that's where the perfectionist needs to leave the room.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of, really try different things, what guitars, wow, you can go all over the place with the guitars too. I mean, that's different too, different tunings, doubling up a guitar, but making sure that, it has a different tone of its own. Because if I do a Les Paul through an AC30 on this side, and I do the same Les Paul AC30 on this side, it's kind of irrelevant. Sure, you're fattening up and you're let's say you're doing like 10 and 2 on your mix, or 9 and 3 on your mixing. You're still going to have two of the same tone melting your face off when you really should have, like, because a lot of times I'll do if it's a power pop song, Les Paul through one of my amps over here, and then I'll have a little bit less dirty telly over here with telly single coils, nothing to fatten it up, because you want the jingle jangle too of the telly bringing out that melody. Because if this one's dirty, you definitely want that there, and then maybe run something completely different in the middle. Do you know what
I heard of someone doing the other day? Putting and this was kind of new for me, putting an SM57 up to the guitarist's
to his pickup,
to his pick hand, picking hand with no amplification, just getting the percussive raw sound and then blending that in. And I was like, yeah, of course. Wait, that's of course that's a thing. I
heard that was a Jeff Lynne trick too. I know Jeff Lynne used to do that a lot.
Yeah,
because it sounds like he's got 4 12 strings going most of the time on the old ELO stuff. Yeah, it just sounds so thick. Yeah, and it just sounds beautiful. And then you roll all the bottom end off, because last thing you want is a real boomy 4 acoustic guitars doing the same thing. Yeah, you don't want any bottom on that at all. No. You just want it really pretty. Yeah, and
very jangly.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Brophy, who was the bass player in the Riverdogs with me, Nick is very freaking gearhead guy, and he's really anal about doing acoustics and vocals. I think his specialty is vocals, but he's one of those guys that certain things have to be very perfect like that, and acoustics have, because he does country. I mean, that's his thing, and he's in Nashville, and he's a big engineer there. But there's those guys too that they like to go by the book, but they're set in their ways, because they know that maybe the publisher or the record company are expecting to hear something. I pretty much say F all those people, because they're not the artist. And what they're expecting is you to make a song sound like the last hit that they pushed and made $1 million off of, and you got $20. So it's not really about that, trying to impress people. It's about just getting a good sound, a real sound, identifiable sound, and cutting that hole for yourself. No matter if you're a kid on his bed in his room, or you have a studio like mine, or bigger, 10 times bigger. It's all about originality and really just being good at what you do, not being a dick about it. I think that's the biggest thing too. It's like, you really want to have fun and do this, because music is an art. It's very temperamental. It can be very temperamental upon the artist, and anybody listening to it. You really don't want to insult people by giving them something cliche and stupid, but a lot of people don't know what is cliche and what is stupid. Some people expect to hear something that sounds perfect.
It's all about making a stamp in time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know what? This is just what it was 2 years ago, and it's not going to sound the same this time around. And then it's not going to sound the same in another 2 years.
And if God forbid I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I still have drives upon drives, CDs upon CDs, cassette tapes upon cassette tapes of stuff that I've done that nobody in the world's going to give a shit about, because I'm not a rock star. But my family, friends, and some people might go, wow, that's really cool. That's really cool shit.
Or listen to what his voice was like 10 years ago, or something like that. I mean, listen to those, sometimes you listen to that Steven Tyler stuff and you're like, that doesn't even sound like the same guy.
No, not at all. I know he changed a lot.
Yeah.
He did change a lot.
That's the beauty of, I don't know, the creativity side of things. Man, have we figured it all out yet? Have we? I feel like we have. I feel like we've just, in this podcast.
I don't think we're ever going to master it, but we're going to try damn hard at doing what we do and be the best at what we do with what we have.
Yeah.
Without having to go into a hole in debt, getting the better, because it's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. It's not the best gear. It's what you can do with what you have. And it really doesn't mean you have to have state-of-the-art SSL console. I want to touch on that right away.
Please.
So many people I know, there's a few, are in the box. Yeah. I'm everything in the box. Yeah. I had a Soundcraft board that was great that I actually bought from the Dust Brothers that did Beck and a bunch of other bands way back when Beastie Boys. It was the same mixer that the first Beastie Boys, second Beastie Boys was recorded on. I love that board, but that was with my old HG system. And then I started seeing a couple friends of mine that were just in the box. I'm like, you don't have a mixer? He goes, nah, fuck, really? It just takes up space, and it's getting so good now that you really don't need to have a mixer. There's a lot of great mixers. If I had the money, would I buy a big console? Probably not.
Really? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think I would, because if anything, I'd get like a lunch box of pre's,
Yeah.
and maybe a little sidecar mixer or something.
Hmm.
But for drums, or maybe a guitar, I want to tweak a little bit. Like, yeah, your amp's great, but I need a little more top, so it cuts a little better, a little mid. But if you can't get it on the amp, I'll get it at the sidecar. So
Hmm.
no, I mean, mixing in LA, people beat you up for mixing in the box. Oh, that's just, that's so freaking rookie. No, I know so many post guys that mix in the box. Again, it's about, you know, how good you are at that. If you could tweak knobs on a virtual screen, why could, you could tweak knobs on a board. The signal chain is going to be different. Yeah, those mic pre's might be a little bit different, but I just, I've never even I never bust out into any hard rack mount gear. Like if I wanted to squash the drums even more and use 1176 or Pultex or whatever to EQ, I still have not bust out ever in the 21 years that I've been in the box. I just don't find, for me personally, I just don't find a need for it. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
You know,
And of course we've got, instant recall.
that's it too. Yeah. If I want to come back to my mix tomorrow, it's going to be exactly like I left it,
Yeah.
unless I crash.
Unless you have a Pro Tools crash.
God forbid. Yeah. Or my drive takes a shit, because the life expectancy is 3 to 5 years max on a drive. So,
Yeah.
okay, back up. We all know that. Back up
Yeah.
in threes, whether you're doing it, burning it to a disc or 2 or 3 other drives,
Hmm.
back that shit up, because
Hmm.
I lost 4 hard drives when that crash happened to me.
Wow.
6 years ago. I lost so much old stuff that I wish I would have backed up on other drives
Hmm.
and not had them plugged in. Because see, that's the thing I made the mistake of, is they were plugged in,
Right.
Firewire drives when Firewire was a thing. Now USB, Lightning, Thunderbolt, whatever, everything is that now. So I just, back up. I can't tell you enough, man, because you just
Hmm.
don't know what's going to happen.
No, so true.
When you hear a light flicker, you think your world is going to go.
I
Oh my
did.
God, it's a power surge. Ah!
I did an interview. The guest I was interviewing was an absolute lovely gentleman person, to me, when this happened, but I definitely deleted the whole interview. This was last year. I deleted the whole thing. We had an amazing conversation.
Oh.
And then I called him. And then you got to do the call. Like, this is the learning experience, right? I had to call him up and say, look, this happened. And he's like, it happens. And that afternoon, I went to Best Buy and brought a second hard drive.
Second drive, yep.
And now I back up twice whenever I do one of these.
Dude, anything. It's the best $120 to $520 anyone could spend, because that's just like your will.
Yeah.
You have to have that backup in case something happens and something dies. You want your last will and testament on another drive so you can reload that back in.
It's quite literally more important than your actual will.
It is. No, you're right. Because it's your livelihood. It's something that means more to you than material things.
Yeah.
But that's one material thing, and a history record of your life right there. And it's stuff you're not going to get back. Sounds you're not going to get back, especially if you have a piece of gear. Let's say you recorded something through an amp that you no longer have, and you hear it and you're like, oh man, I can't get that sound anymore. I could come close. It's like me. I have 6 sets of drums, 7 sets of drums, 5 different bass drums. I have 31 or 32 different snare drums, I think now, or something crazy. Oh no, I have 31, 32 guitars, and everybody's like, you're a drummer, but I love guitars. Yeah. So I have a ton of guitars.
Yeah.
Not great guitars. Maybe 4 of them are. But snare drums are really important, especially when I was sessioning a lot.
Yeah.
Because they would say, bring in, Fasano could attest to that too.
Well, yeah. I had him on.
Yeah, you did. And Mike and I love Mike. He was my guy, and I never looked at him as like my tech. He's my buddy.
Yeah.
And he's helped me out.
Yeah.
I can't say, because I hate it when people, he's my roadie. Oh, fuck you. He's not a roadie. Mike's more than that. He's got great ears.
Yeah.
And Mike, you know, when we did Gilby's record, he came in with a whole two big lockers full of Matt's snare drums, my snare drums. We had more snare drums than people at A&M recording at that time. It was stupid. What did we use? 2. So, you know, whatever. More the merrier. Right. Just like you can never have too many gigs of RAM on your computer, or too much hard, you know, how many terabytes can you possibly have?
Of course.
So more is better, especially in DAW recording. You know, you definitely got to have a lot, you know, of everything, but that's so important.
Well, I don't know if we, like we said, I don't know if we figured out audio production in this podcast, but do you know what? The second one we do of these, we will figure it out, I guarantee. So, Marc Danzeisen, thank you so much for your time. I really can't thank you enough. Welcome. I really, really appreciate it. I know anyone that has an interest in audio, mixing, recording, musicianing, any of that stuff is going to get so much out of listening to your stories and your words of wisdom and just how... you know, just enthusiastic you are about it, and it's great to see that, and it's great to hear it. So, yeah, a real pleasure for me. Thank you so much, and
you're very welcome.
Let's catch up again really soon.
Let's do that. Let's do some songs.
Definitely. I'll speak to you soon, man.
All right. You take care of yourself.
See you soon.
Bye.